Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 6 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. So I hope everyone is having a fabulous week so far. Today, I thought I would read out the first 10 chapters of my vampire romance novel called The Desires of an Angel. The subtitle on the front cover is What Happens When an Angel Falls in Love by myself, Priya Grewal, and it's available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. So I thought that I would read the first 10 chapters of the book, The Desires of an Angel, today, and I'll do the second half, the next 10 chapters, next Wednesday. So let's dig in. Right, so The Desires of an Angel by myself, Priya Grewal. Chapter 1. Heather packed up her bag at the end of her workday, 2 minutes to 5 p.m., relieved that it was time for the weekend. This was the way she felt every Friday, like time for the weekend was cause for a massive celebration. The manager let them listen to the radio during the workday now, which made the workday more bearable. She was a customer service officer at a waste collection company, so had to deal with angry customers on the phone all day, complaining about their waste collection not being on time or not turning up. She had to put up with looking at the photos the customers sent in showing that their waste had not been collected. She couldn't be bothered to walk today to the bus stop, so used Uber to get a taxi. "Bye," Heather shouted to her colleagues. "Have a nice weekend. See you on Monday." "Bye," her 3 work colleagues responded. There was only 4 of them who worked in the office, and her manager Simon sat at a desk by himself, popping in and out during the workday. He had already left for the day at 2:30 p.m. Heather rushed down the stairs and out the front door to catch her taxi. She saw a big silver car at the gate and checked the number plate to make sure it was her Uber. She walked hurriedly to the car, opened the door, and greeted the taxi driver. She double-checked that he was heading to her home address, 35 Whitechapel Road, Twickenham. Heather sat back and put her headphones in, smiling happily as the music started to play. She loved listening to Jamaican music at the moment and enjoyed the upbeat sound of the melody. It put her in the mood for her night out the following Saturday night, and her heart beat excitedly at the thought of it. She had been single for quite a few years now and got fed up with people asking her why she was single at the bar on the weekends, like there was some big mystery behind it. People used to stare at her blankly when she responded, saying, "There's no major cause behind it." Sometimes she responded with, "I just haven't met anyone." She had 2 long teenage relationships and a 2-week best friend one where she couldn't make the jump from friend to boyfriend, and had been single since she was 20. She was now 27. She had loved her university years, especially after the first year of settling in, and loved being single for the whole thing, student nights becoming her life. She had continued to party practically every weekend since. She felt that she had really found herself, her own identity from being single, and was really happy not having a boyfriend. She viewed life from school and university as it being everyone else's turn for boyfriends and girlfriends now. She felt she had done her time, having started young at 13. She viewed it as always being in a relationship from the ages of 13 to 19 with just a 1-year break in between, and felt now she was living her life to the fullest. What was it that lured her to the bar or club on the weekends, she thought? She decided it must be her love of music. She loved R&B nights out specifically. If the music changed, she would probably go home if it changed to a genre of music with no lyrics, which could be better to attract a crowd. She knew her limit when it came to drinking alcohol and stopped before she approached throwing up, learning her lesson from her early student years. Heather took her earphones out as the taxi driver approached her house. "Okay, we're here," the taxi driver said. "Thank you so much," said Heather, opening the door and jumping out. The taxi was prepaid for with Uber. "Bye," Heather said to the taxi driver, closing the car door. She opened the small gate in front of the house and walked up the pathway to the door. As she turned her key in the door, she turned her head around for a moment, pausing. It felt like she could feel a mysterious presence in the air. She blinked, confused for a moment, and then shook her head, dismissing the feeling. She stepped through the front door. Across the road, a pair of golden eyes gleamed hidden between the trees, finally retreating as the seconds went by. Chapter 2. The next evening, Heather was getting ready for a night out with her two female friends, Angela and Natalia. They were going to a bar around 20 minutes away from their hometown. It had fast become their favourite bar in the years following university. They loved bumping into people from the local secondary schools from their town. Heather loved it becoming like a club called Steps in the movie Save the Last Dance, playing R&B music and bumping into old acquaintances, even from primary school. Heather looked in the mirror and applied red lipstick onto her mouth. She had already put on black mascara and eyeliner. She briefly assessed her reflection in the mirror. She had chosen to wear a lacy top and red trousers, choosing not to get really dressed up in a glittery dress for a local bar. Natalia was going to call her when she was outside her house in a taxi, and then they were going to pick up Angela. Heather's phone vibrated. She glanced at her phone, seeing Natalia's message saying she was outside. Heather grabbed her bag, put it around her waist, feeling like a clubbing expert after all the years of partying in comparison to the girls who still took purses to the club or bar. She wondered why they weren't concerned about losing it or forgetting it somewhere. She didn't need to think twice about losing her trusted side bag. Heather went down the stairs and looked at her mum sitting on the sofa in a blanket watching Strictly Come Dancing. She had her glasses on. "Bye, Mum," Heather said, kissing her mum on the forehead. "Bye, Heather," her mum said. "Have a nice time." "Thanks," replied Heather. Heather kissed her younger sister on the forehead and said, "Bye, Hania." Her younger sister had shiny black hair and beautiful dark eyes which sparkled when she talked. She was 20 years old and on her Easter holiday from the University of Warwick. Heather had invited her to the night out, but Hania had declined the offer. Heather smiled amused, saying bye to her sister, not knowing why she would rather stay in on a Saturday night watching Strictly Come Dancing instead of going to the local bar called Vortex. Hania responded, saying bye. Heather opened the patio door, putting her heels on, and opened the front door. She rushed to the taxi and opened the door, seeing Natalia's face through the car window. "Hey," Heather greeted Natalia, closing the car door behind her. "Hi," Natalia said, giving her a quick hug. They hadn't met up for a few weeks. Natalia gave the taxi driver Angela's address. It was only 30 seconds away in the car. The car parked outside Angela's house, and Natalia called Angela to tell her to come outside. Heather smiled as she watched Angela leave her house and lock the door behind her. Angela smiled and walked up to the car looking jolly. "Hi," she said jovially, closing the car door behind her. "I'm so excited. Haven't had a night out in ages," Angela remarked, smiling excitedly. "Wonder if we'll see anyone we recognize," said Natalia. Heather smiled. Natalia looked at her and said, "You just want to go to see guys staring at you," she said, humorously aggressive. "No, I don't," Heather lied, smiling guiltily. "So what?" she thought to herself. "Not like I have anything else going on for myself," she thought, apart from enjoying walking down the road life and enjoying getting glanced at by the opposite gender and my dead-end job. She hated talking to people about what she did for a living, experiencing comments like, "Why are you working as a customer service officer?" and didn't want any friends to bring out their second cousins again telling her she had a dead-end job. She wondered if they were evil, trying to drain the life out of people. Whatever dead-end job actually meant. It was the only job she could get. "How's Tony?" Heather asked Angela. Angela had been with her boyfriend Tony for nearly 10 years. He wasn't very friendly and just stood there like a silent bystander whenever Angela brought him out. Angela's personality wasn't quite what it was since seeing Tony. She had become a lot quieter and went from Heather's best friend growing up to it feeling like Heather was forcing herself when trying to make conversation with her. The friendship went from a natural flow of conversation to it feeling like Heather was just being nice, forcing conversation. She had managed to maintain a friendship with Angela going on nights out, bothering with her still due to their childhood years together. "He's fine," Angela responded. "Are you going to get married?" Natalia asked. "Now you've been together for nearly 10 years. "I don't know," Angela responded. "I guess so," she said unenthusiastically. She sounded like she didn't want to talk about him any longer. "Well, I'm going to cheat on my boyfriend tonight," Natalia declared. Heather saw the taxi driver smirk to himself. Heather started laughing. "Why? You've managed to get to 3 months with no philandering. What happened?" Natalia had been seeing her boyfriend Dino for 3 months now. He He was friendlier than Tony, Angela's boyfriend, but had looked a little shifty at the beginning of the relationship, giving Heather a hard stare. She wasn't quite sure what to make of him, but he had become friendlier as time went on. Because, Natalia said, I looked through his text messages on his phone, and he had written a text to some girl saying she could never hold a candle to you. Ranvi or something her name was. I think it's his ex-girlfriend. I looked her up on Facebook. She looked like she's wearing too much foundation and blusher. Looked like a funny doll, making her skin look pale deliberately. I'm sorry, Heather said. That's awful. What a horrible skis bag, Angela said. Why don't you just break up with him, Heather asked, instead of the cheating thing? You could say he emotionally cheated first and make a big deal out of it. Might be a better way to play the game. Because, Natalia said, I want to make a fool out of him, the way I feel. Okay, Heather said, not knowing if this was the best course of action to take in terms of Natalia thinking of her own reputation. But Natalia was her friend, so she would support her in whatever she wanted to do. Heather tapped Natalia comfortingly on the back. My ex is coming out tonight, Natalia declared. I can cheat with him. Heather and Angela glanced at one another for a second. Angela looked intrigued at the drama, getting excited about the commotion. The taxi driver was still smirking, listening to the conversation, silently laughing to himself. The taxi pulled up to the bar, the girls paid the fee and stepped out. Natalia looked like she was on a mission, acting like the paparazzi were standing outside the club with their cameras. Guess my camera will have to do, Heather thought to herself, thinking to herself if she should half hold Natalia walking into the bar for the drama until they found her ex-boyfriend so she could kiss him. Nevertheless, Heather showed her ID to the bouncer and entered the bar feeling excited about the night out. Chapter 3. Heather felt like cheering entering the bar. It was busy downstairs and the music was pumping. Heather, Natalia and Angela went up to the bar to order drinks. They got a round of flavoured shots and all downed them. They decided to explore the upstairs floor. Heather's adrenaline began to pump as she heard MVP Rock Your Body, a song from 2005, playing. So, Heather said, is your ex here? Natalia said, not yet. I'll WhatsApp him to see if he is on his way. I love this song, Angela exclaimed. Let's go dance. The three of them moved nearer to the centre of the dance floor to dance. Look, Heather said, spotting some old friends of theirs from school. There's Rick. Who's he with? Natalia asked, trying to spot Rick. Sam and Ricardo, Heather responded. Let's go say hi, Heather said. Fine, Natalia said, rolling her eyes. Why do you sound so unenthusiastic? Heather said. They're our old friends. The three of them had hung around with the three boys and a couple of others in year 10 and 11 and sixth form. They're so boring, Natalia explained. They need to have a whole bottle of alcohol before they liven up. Heather laughed. She went forward to hug Rick, her old best friend. They used to speak on the phone for hours. She secretly agreed with Natalia. They weren't as fun as they used to be, but she could still have fun with them after they'd had a few drinks. He hugged her back and said hello to Natalia and Angela. Heather greeted Sam and Ricardo. We're just getting some drinks in. Do any of you want anything? Rick asked. No thanks, Heather shouted over the music. We just had some shots. The boys huddled together to get a drink at the bar. Natalia engaged Heather and Angela in conversation again as they stood behind the three boys. My ex isn't coming now, Natalia groaned unhappily. Says he's got some family function to go to. Oh no, Heather said. What are you going to do now? Angela was grinning. I'm going to hook up with Ricardo instead, exclaimed Natalia. Hook up? Heather said questioningly. With Ricardo? I just mean kissing, Natalia said. Rick said he always had a thing for me since we were younger. Heather and Angela glanced at one another. Nothing had ever happened romantically before between the males and females in this particular group of old friends. Natalia pushed herself forward to the front of the bar where Ricardo was standing and whispered something into his ear. She took hold of his hand as she whispered. Heather and Angela watched, eyes widening at the scene. Ricardo nodded his head and Natalia began leading him out of the crowd. Grinning, she waved to the pair of them and left the room with Ricardo. Heather had never started kissing anyone in the club before or bar. She had never done anything outside of a relationship in England. She had just kissed a stranger once in a club on holiday at 21 as a dare from her university flatmates. She had been drinking and thought of it as peer pressure. She had run away after 30 seconds. Only abroad, though. Angela hadn't kissed anyone outside of a relationship either as of yet. She had managed not to cheat on Tony as far as Heather knew. Rick turned to Heather. "Do you know Larry doesn't talk to me anymore?" Rick asked mysteriously. "Why not?" Heather asked. "I thought you were best friends." Angela had started to mess around with Sam, annoying him by tapping him around the head. "I invited his ex-girlfriend to my birthday that I had here back in November. Remember?" he asked. "Oh, yeah. He's not talking to you anymore over that?" Heather inquired. "Yeah, she's my girlfriend's friend. We were celebrating our 7-year anniversary as well. That's why we invited her," he stated. Rick had been together with his girlfriend for ages. Heather wondered if he'd be more popular if he dropped the girlfriend, maybe went out with someone a bit prettier by now instead of the school story thing. "I guess that is a bit annoying," Heather said to Rick. "Anyone might get annoyed if their teen ex turned up to the same event as themselves." "I invited your ex from 13 tonight, Mario," Rick said cheekily. "What?" shouted Heather, getting irritated. "I'm joking," Rick said. "Ha ha," Heather said sarcastically. Rick laughed. "Hopefully Larry gets over it," she added. Heather and Angela spent the rest of the night circulating around the bar, talking to Rick and Sam and dancing here and there. Natalia and Ricardo hadn't returned. "I could have sworn he liked me," Angela said to Heather at one point of the night. "What?" Heather asked. "Who do you mean?" "Ricardo," Angela stated as if it was obvious. She had a new habit of looking like she wanted to take over any conversation with any male when they went out, even if Heather was just talking to someone socially. The interest confused Heather when Angela had been in a long-term relationship. Didn't she love Tony? Was she getting bored? "Oh well," Heather said, not too sure how to respond. Angela had a boyfriend. She shouldn't be the one crying about it. As Heather pondered all morals going out of the window, a stranger walked into the upper-level room of the bar. He was 6 foot tall and mysterious-looking. He had pale skin and his eyes looked like they were golden. He had ebony black hair. As Heather watched him, feeling intrigued, his head turned and his golden eyes fixed directly onto hers. It was going to be a night that Heather would never forget. Chapter 4. Heather continued to stare at the stranger. He was the most handsome individual she had ever seen. Her breath nearly stuck in her throat. "Who is that?" Angela asked curiously. "He's really handsome," she added. "Wish I had his eyes, though." "Yeah," Heather said, still amazed by the stranger, and nodded her head in agreement. The stranger leaned against the bar and smiled, glancing down. He didn't seem to be with anyone. Heather wanted to drift towards him so she could start a conversation. "Let's move closer to him," Heather asked Angela, tugging her arm and moving her in the direction of the stranger. "Oh, for the love of God," Angela said, glancing at the stranger with slight envy. "He must be in Jeepers Creepers with those eyes. Everyone wants them," Angela stated, eyes narrowing slightly. Heather managed to stand a little closer to the stranger. He carried on leaning against the bar and looking at her. She finally pushed her way forward to the front of the crowd around the bar, dragging Angela along behind her. She was standing right next to him. She inhaled his fragrance, which was divine. He was dressed all in black. She glanced at his black jacket sleeve, pretending to act normal. She made it look like she was casually waiting to be served instead of trying to stand nearer to him. Then she heard a deep voice say, "Hello." She turned her head to look at him surprised and said, "Oh, hello." "My name is Viscero," he said. "What's yours?" "I'm Heather," Heather said, heart beating in excitement. A pleasure to meet you, Heather," Viscero said, and reached out his hand in a handshake. Heather giggled for a moment at the gesture and put her hand in Viscero's. He shook it. His hand had a nice grip on hers. "Do you come here often?" asked Viscero. "Yes, all the time," Heather answered. "Have you been here before?" "No, it's my first time," said Viscero. "I guess I would have noticed you if you had been here before," Heather stated. "You're kind of hard to miss." Viscero laughed. "Thanks," he said. "A compliment from a beautiful woman is a big deal," Viscero said. "You're making my head grow big." Heather blushed at the compliment. "Thanks," she said. "No one's ever called me beautiful before." He grabbed her hand and kissed it. "Well, everyone must be blind," Viscero said to her, still holding her hand for a moment. Heather glanced into his golden eyes, breath stuck in her throat, mesmerized. His eyes were like beautiful pools of golden liquid. She thought she could stare into them all day. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, and she wasn't used to feeling her heart jump in excitement speaking to the opposite gender before. Most of them had terrible manners. She had ended up cutting her hair short again, bumping into a male from another university in London saying, "Why don't you put more volume in your hair?" She wondered why he was copying Al Pacino's character in The Devil's Advocate nearly word for word. She wasn't sure what volume meant, so just ended up cutting her hair into a bob cut. It was still currently short, just above her shoulder. She wasn't accustomed to Viceroy's charming manner. She thought she should ask a question next. "So, where are you from?" she asked. "You mean where do I live?" asked Viceroy. "Just from the next town. Osterley," he said. "Osterley?" Heather asked. That was a rich area, or so she had been told. "And you?" Viceroy asked. "I live in Twickenham," she said. "Maybe we should meet up sometime," Viceroy asked. "We don't live too far from one another." Heather inhaled for a moment. She couldn't believe this handsome stranger was asking her out. Her heart beat excitedly. "Sure," she responded happily. "That would be nice." "Can I have your number then?" Viceroy asked. "So I can call you to arrange a meet-up." "Sure," Heather exclaimed again. He handed her his phone. "Put in your number," he said. Heather put her number into his phone and handed it back for himself to save. He took his phone back, smiling, glancing at her number. She watched as he saved it, writing in her name, Heather. "Did you come here by yourself?" Heather asked. "No, I came with a couple of friends," he said hurriedly. "They're downstairs." He glanced at his watch and said, "Actually, I better get going. Have to be somewhere early tomorrow." He gazed at Heather, looking reluctant to leave for a moment. "Bye, Heather," he said, kissing her on the cheek. "I'll be in touch." With that, he turned around and disappeared, going down the stairs to the bottom floor. Heather reached up to touch her face, her heart racing. She turned around to go look for Angela. Chapter 5. Heather had arranged to meet Viceroy the following weekend. He had started messaging her on Sunday. Her heart had skipped a beat when her mobile phone text message alert had gone off. She picked up her phone, hand slightly shaking, and saw she had received a text message from a number she didn't have saved. She opened the text message. "Remember me?" the text message had said. "Viceroy?" she asked questioningly, hoping it was him. "Yeah," the text message said, and her heart skipped a beat again. "Was a pleasure meeting you yesterday," the text message said. "Ditto," she replied. "So," the next message said, "do you want to meet up next weekend?" "Sure," Heather wrote out her reply. "What do you want to do?" "I can pick you up in my car," Viceroy replied, "if you give me your address and take it from there." "Sure," Heather responded. "That sounds good." She typed out her address with the postcode. "See you then," she finished off with. One more text message came through. This one said, "I look forward to it. I'll pick you up at 2 p.m. Heather's heart filled with glee. She thought she had better respond saying 2 p.m. was fine. "Great," she punched into her phone. She decided not to type, "It's a date," as she didn't want to come on too strong. He had left it at that. Heather squirmed with excitement all week, waiting for the work week to go by, counting down the days to Saturday. When Friday finally came around, Viceroy had text messaged her to make sure she still wanted to meet up. She had confirmed that she would be ready to be picked up from her house at 2 p.m. on the following day. The following day, around 1:30 in the afternoon, Heather was looking in the mirror and putting dangling earrings into her pierced ears. It was early spring, around mid-March. The weather was starting to get nice, so Heather wore a light top with grey trousers and had applied rose lipstick to her lips. She decided to wear flat pump shoes instead of heels. She had told her mum that she was just meeting up with a friend. "Okay, dear," her mother had said. At 1:57 p.m, Heather's phone rang. She quickly grabbed her phone off her bed. "Hello," Heather said somewhat nervously. "Hi there," said Viceroy. The sound of his deep voice made Heather's heart leap out of her chest. "I'm outside your house, parked in a red car," he added. "Okay, I'll be out in a minute," said Heather. "Bye," she added. "Bye," she added. "Bye," he responded, sounding amused. Heather ran down the stairs, deciding not to wear a jacket. "Bye, Mum," she called to her mother. "Bye, love," her mother called back, pausing her phone conversation for a moment. Heather slipped her shoes on and walked out of the door, closing it behind her. Heather wasn't an expert on cars, but Viceroy's red number looked really flash. She loved it. She smiled widely at him, recognizing his face through the car window. He looked really handsome wearing a brown jacket. He smiled back, eyes shining brightly. She felt nervous again going to the other side of the car to get in. She opened the car door. "Hello, beautiful," Viscero said. "You look amazing." "Thanks," Heather laughed, unused to how nice Viscero was. "You look great. I love your jacket," she added. "Oh, this old thing," Viscero said jokingly, shrugging his shoulders. Heather laughed. "So, where to?" Viscero asked. "Anywhere in particular you want to go?" I'm not sure," Heather responded. "You decide." "Okay," Viscero said, turning the key in the car ignition. He looked behind him to make sure no other cars were coming, and began to move the car, turning the wheel very smoothly. "Let's see where the road takes us," Viscero said. Heather continued to look at Viscero, heart fluttering excitedly. Viscero parked his car on a quiet road in Richmond. The sun was shining and there was a breeze in the air. It was perfect weather. Heather felt happy getting out of the car, enjoying the spring. She closed the car door. "Where are we going?" asked Heather, smiling. She couldn't stop looking at Viscero's handsome face. It was so exciting to be in the presence of someone as gorgeous as himself. His golden eyes gleamed in the sun, and she loved what he was wearing, a brown suede jacket and black trousers. "There's a park around a 5-minute walk away from here. It's really lovely," Viscero said. "I thought we could sit there, enjoy the weather for a while. It's like a gem that no one really knows about." "Okay," Heather said, going to stand beside him. They started walking towards the park. Viscero had started to ask Heather what she did for a living. "Job's a job, I guess," Heather said after telling him about being a customer service officer for a waste collection company. "How about you?" she asked. I'm just in between jobs at the moment," he said. They reached the park and Heather stopped in her tracks for a moment. "Wow, this is beautiful," Heather exclaimed. "Can't believe I've never seen it before." The park had stone steps leading down to it. The grass was nice and cut, and there were beautiful flower beds full of coloured flowers around the grass. "Come on," Viscero said, grabbing her hand and slipping it into his. They walked down the stairs. There was one other couple there, male and female, sitting under a tree, talking. Viscero led her to another tree in the park and sat underneath it. She followed his example and sat down. He held onto her hand for a moment longer when they sat down and released it a moment later. "I love sitting in parks when the weather is nice," he said. "Same," said Heather. He glanced up at the blue sky and clouds. "Do you ever wonder if there is more out there?" Viscero asked. "How do you mean?" asked Heather. "Just when you look up at the clouds, do you ever wonder if there's more out there, or do you think there is just this, humans on planet Earth?" he asked. Heather said, not used to deep conversations by now. "Sure, I look up at the clouds sometimes and wonder if God exists. I get a little confused thinking about it. Then I find it weird looking at the clouds and looking back down at the cars and thinking about jobs and money. Like the two things don't go together, the clouds and us," she added. "You mean there must be a designer for the clouds to be there and the trees and everything set out like it is? The oceans and sand on the beaches," Viscero said, casually making gestures with his hands when speaking about oceans and sand. Heather laughed for a moment. "Are you quoting the design argument?" She laughed again. "I learned about it in A-level philosophy of religion." Viscero smiled, also amused. "They don't explain it properly at school," Viscero said. "That's why it just goes over the students' heads, none of them really taking it in." He paused for a moment as Heather waited for him to speak again. "When you're confused about the clouds in the sky and humans on the ground and our cars," he said, "it means it's not explained that there is an architect for planet Earth, where everything was drawn out and designed first. It's the explanation for order in the universe. It's not possible for there to be design and structure from a random occurrence like the Big Bang, a random explosion, as science attempts to teach." "Well, it sure makes sense when you say it," Heather said honestly. It did make more sense when Viscero explained it rather than the teacher during her school years. "Okay," Heather said, talking bravely. "I do get confused thinking about babies and how a woman's body can be as I am now. Normal one day, and then the next we're able to carry a baby and have everything in our insides that support the baby, and voila, one day they pop out of you 9 months later. A life," she told him. "Miracle of childbirth," Viscero said. "Proof of the existence of God." "So, it's magic?" Heather asked. Viscero laughed. There's also male and female parts slotting into each other in all the right places for sex, he said. More evidence of there being a designer for the human body. Heather smiled, embarrassed, and realized he was right. She leaned back, narrowing her eyes slightly, getting confused about the prospect of God as she thought about their deep conversation. Vistro looked at her for a moment. Do you believe that there is one person out there for every individual? A perfect match, he asked. Heather had never really thought about it. Heather felt a little happy about the flirtation. You mean a perfect character match? Someone each individual would love living with once married, like their yin to their yang, she asked. Yes, Vistro said, but it's an important thing, finding your perfect mate, getting married and experiencing the pleasure of sex together. So yeah, it's finding who you're going to have the most fun living with out of everyone on the planet. Then falling in love from spending time together comes from it. Well, yeah, she said. I imagine it is possible to have a perfect match when you explain it like that. I wonder if you found yours, Vistro asked quietly. He put his hand over hers on the grass. She glanced down at their hands and glanced back up into his mesmerizing eyes. Can I kiss you? Asked Vistro. Heather looked at him surprised and nervously nodded her head slowly. She was really nervous not having kissed anyone since she was 21 years old. 6 years later, she wasn't even sure if she could remember how to kiss. Nevertheless, she let him lean in for a kiss. She glanced at his mouth before it touched hers. He kissed her slowly. She relaxed after a moment, letting him kiss her, nerves melting away. He put his hand in the back of her head, clutching her hair. Wow, he said a few moments later, pulling his head away. You have the softest hair, he said, and a heavenly mouth. Heather was silent for a moment. She could feel her heart beating again. She gazed at him. I think I'm falling in love, she thought to herself. Ditto was all she could manage to breathe out after a moment. She wanted to collapse on the grass, arms and legs outstretched, not accustomed to feeling the feelings she was feeling at the moment. Her teen experiences may have just been zero feelings throughout the whole teen relationship drama in comparison to this. Come on, Vistro said, getting up and reaching for Heather's hand again, pulling her up. Let's go, he said. The other couple glanced at both of them as they exited the park, smiling as they watched the pair depart. Chapter 7. The next day, Heather felt like she was on cloud 9. Vistro had taken her breath away the day before, kissing her gently again before she got out of the car. He finished their meet-up with a see you soon. She couldn't wait to see him again. She spent most of the rest of the day smiling to herself. Why are you so happy? Her mother had asked her earlier on in the day. Oh, no reason, Heather had responded. Nothing wrong with being happy, is there? She added. No, of course not, her mother had replied, turning back to the TV. Her sister, Hania, narrowed her eyes for a second, looking suspicious, and went back to reading her book. Heather felt her phone vibrate on the armrest. She glanced down. It was a WhatsApp message from Viscero. Hi, beautiful, he had written. Did you have a nice time yesterday? Heather's heart skipped a beat. She typed back a message excitedly. I had the greatest time ever, she responded. Her phone vibrated again a moment later. Good, I'm glad, he had written. When can I see you again? Whenever, Heather typed back, not wanting to sound fussy. I work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, she added. How about Friday evening, Heather read. I'll pick you up around 7:30ish. We can grab something to eat. Sounds perfect, Heather responded. Heather squealed silently in excitement. She couldn't wait to see him again. Heather placed her phone on the armrest and looked at the TV, smiling, trying to get into the TV show her mother was watching. Her heart was filled up with excitement for the rest of the evening. Chapter 8. It was Friday evening and Heather had finished getting dressed. She had decided not to wear any makeup and wore a beige lacy dress with tights. She wanted Viscero to see her with no makeup on so he knew what she looked like without any eyeliner or lipstick. Her phone buzzed on her dressing table. Viscero had sent her a WhatsApp message saying he was outside her house. She grabbed her phone and bag and ran down the stairs. She shouted, Bye, Mum. Bye, Hania, not wanting to keep Viscero waiting. She saw Viscero look at her as she closed the front door behind her. He glanced over her legs appreciatively. You look lovely, Viscero said as she got into the front seat of the car. I like your legs, he added. Heather blushed and smiled. Thanks, she managed to stutter out. She looked Viscero over to give him a compliment back. Viscero was wearing a grey top and black trousers. I like your top, Heather said. Viscera started laughing and said thanks back. He looked gorgeous. Heather didn't want to stop staring at him. Right, you happy going to the burger joint? Asked Viscera. Yeah, definitely, Heather replied. The burger joint was a popular restaurant in her local high street. Everyone liked going there for the chicken burgers and fries. She was looking forward to eating there. Okay, let's go, Viscera said, turning the key in the ignition. Chapter 9. Viscera watched Heather's face as she finished eating. Did you enjoy your meal? Viscera asked as she finished eating her burger. Yeah, it was great, Heather responded. He was sitting across from her. He had asked her a few questions about who she had hung around with as they both ate. She told him about Natalia and Angela and said she went into central London to catch up with university friends from time to time, and explained about her old school crew with Rick, Sam and Ricardo and the two girls. Well, they sound delightful, Viscera had said, eyebrow raised and sounding amused when she told him that the boys had to have shared a whole bottle of alcohol between them before they livened up since finishing school. She had entertained him with the story of Natalia's cheating escapade the other night. Sounds like a real character, he had responded. They had debated whether they thought Natalia was in the right, cheating due to the text message she had read. Well, that is horrible, reading a text message like that, Viscera had said. Most people would want to lash out. Yeah, Heather said, liking him for not judging Natalia and looking at the whole picture. Dino had been acting like the victim since Natalia had told him what had happened. Him and his friends were making references to betrayals through songs about cheating on his Facebook. It was a bit like they were attacking Natalia, and Heather felt a little uncomfortable when she saw the references to it. Heather had called Natalia to check if she was okay. Turned out she was enjoying the attention. Yeah, babe, she had said. I'm loving it. Loving all the drama. She thought she may have heard slight heartbreak about the text message in her voice and was putting on a lot of bravado. Viscera had listened to Heather carefully as she told him about her friends. How about you? Heather asked once she'd finished eating. What are your friends like? She asked. They're okay, you know, Viscera said. Guys are guys. We play games and sports and just want a pretty girlfriend to go home to one day, he said. Heather felt her heart flutter. So, he said, reaching out and taking her hand and holding it across the table. He looked into both of her eyes. His golden eyes shone brightly. Heather sucked in a deep breath. Do you want to be my girlfriend? He asked her. Heather stopped breathing in after a moment and said, Of course, and breathed out normally again. Well, thank heavens for that, Viscera said, letting go of her hand and wiping his mouth with the napkin. Wasn't sure what you were going to say there for a minute. Was the longest moment of my life, he added. Sorry, Heather said. I was just taken aback for a moment, not knowing what you were about to say. Well, I'm really happy, Viscera exclaimed, taking her hand again. Heather laughed. Me too, she said. Oh yeah, she said after a moment. I just realized I never asked how old you are. You were just so good-looking, Heather told truthfully. Asking about your age completely slipped my mind. Viscera smiled and paused for a moment. I'm 34, he answered. Oh, Heather said, liking the fact that he was older than her. I'm 27, she said. I know, Viscera said. No, you don't, Heather replied, laughing. How could you know if you never asked? I'm psychic, he responded. Heather smiled, grinning widely. Come on, let's go and drive around for a bit, Viscera said. He stood up, still holding her hand and pulling her up with him. About 20 minutes later, Viscera had parked his car on an empty road next to a field area and was kissing Heather in the back seat of the car. Viscera was a perfect gentleman, Heather thought to herself, just kissing her and not putting his hands anywhere that indicated he wanted to go further. She loved the feel of his hand on her hip as he kissed her and his other arm around her shoulder. You're so beautiful, he said, stopping for a moment and kissing her again. I love your face and your personality. You're perfect for me, he said, and started to kiss her passionately again. They kissed in the car for around 40 minutes before Viscera came up to breathe again. Okay, he said, smiling happily. I think I love you, he told Heather and caressed her hair and cheek, looking down at her face. She looked at him, heart pounding wildly. I think I love you too, she said, feeling addicted to himself. Well, that's good then, Viscera said, Heather feeling complete in his arms. He kissed her again softly. Okay, I'll take you home now, Viscera said, glancing at the time. It was just a little after 11 p.m. He kissed her on the cheek as he stopped his car to let her out. She left the car feeling giddy. See you, she said to him, waving. Bye, he said. Until next time. Heather put her key into the front door of her house. She turned around to see if Viscera was still there. He was watching her from his car. He smiled and waved. She waved back again and entered her house smiling, her insides feeling content with happiness. Chapter 10. Heather spent the next day, Saturday, dreamily happy. She decided not to tell her mother about Viscero yet, as it was early days. She was polishing the mantelpiece in the house, as she helped her mother with chores on a Saturday morning. It was Honia's turn to do the hoovering. Both of them had their iPods on. Heather was listening to love songs and thinking about Viscero. She didn't know it was possible to fall in love this quick. She felt that Viscero had completely swept her off her feet. She didn't just love him because he was gorgeous. She loved how lovely he was in character. A real gentleman. A rare find. I'm so lucky, Heather thought to herself. She glanced down at her phone. She didn't want to text message Viscero herself, as she still didn't want to come on too strong, so she just waited for him to get in touch with herself. After she was done polishing, Heather settled down on the sofa to watch a movie with her mother and sister. Her phone vibrated. Hey, beautiful, Heather read. I had a great time yesterday. Do you want to meet up tomorrow around 3 p.m? We can walk down to Woodrow Park and sit under a tree for the afternoon. He had put a smiley face next to the sentence. Heather wasn't accustomed to using emoticons herself. She felt too stiff from attending school and university. Sure, Heather typed. Where shall we meet? Meet you outside the convenience store near your house. We can walk down together. Okay, great. See you tomorrow. Let me know when you're outside the store. I'll leave my house then. Heather put her phone on the armrest. A moment later it buzzed again. Will do. See you tomorrow. He had put a heart emoticon and an X at the end of the sentence. Heather responded with an X. She put her phone down and laid her head on a cushion. The movie was just beginning. She loved how Viscero didn't waste time with phone calls and messaging all evening. He just texted her and got straight to the point about meeting up. Heather liked that feature about him, as it meant she didn't annoy her mother with messaging on her phone all evening, annoying her with the sound of pressing the buttons. Heather settled down and tried to get into the movie, smiling to herself, excited about seeing Viscero the next day. Her boyfriend, she thought happily to herself. Okay, so that's the first 10 chapters of my vampire romance novel called The Desires of an Angel. I hope everyone enjoyed listening so far. So next Wednesday I will return with season 3 episode 7 and read out the next 10 chapters, which is the remainder of the book. So my book The Desires of an Angel by myself, Priya Grewal, is available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode, and thank you to anyone who tunes into my podcast. Take care, everyone. Have a fabulous week. Until next week. Bye-bye.